Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this fourth teaching on the Mahamudra prayer from the third Jalwa. Karmapa, and as you can see, we're in a different location today. I'm in Scotland for a little while, and that's not very important. In the first teaching, we had an overview of the prayer. And in the second teaching, there was a very kind of general introduction through the first verse, just setting up the prayer, more or less. In the third teaching, we had the first main section of the prayer, which was one verse, which was a general dedication of all the goodness, all the good things we do, all the good practice towards enlightenment, and in particular towards achieving enlightenment through Mahamudra. That was the verse about the snow mountain and the rivers ending up in the four kayas, with an emphasis on the highest motivation that runs through our Mahamudra lineage. Now we come to the second main section of the main body of the prayer, and this will carry on through nearly all of the rest of the verses, and it's the specifics where we focus on the detail. Today we enter into two verses which are prayers. Of course, they're aspirations. This whole prayer is aspirations concerning the support for Mahamudra. Now, this word support or basis is a code word, and it means an existence. Nearly always it indicates a human existence, and you'll know all about this because in the foundations for Mahamudra, the preparations which are so necessary and which the greatest Mahamudra teachers say, without the foundations, the mudra, then the rest isn't going to work. So in the foundations, you studied the precious human existence. And this is about this precious human existence and a prayer for what we will do with our future precious existences, precious human existences. This verse is called a general or a common aspiration. And then in the next teaching, when we come to the following verse, it will be a very specific aspiration, a prayer. And remember, these prayers, now we've touched the topic of motivation, are about channeling all the goodness, so that we're channeling through aspiration all their merit, all the power that we've accumulated into what in general we want to happen in our future existences and what very specifically we want to happen. So first, let me read you this verse. Until this be achieved, birth after birth, and in all my lives, may even the terms sin and suffering be unheard, and may the plenitude of an ocean of happiness and goodness be enjoyed. Until this be achieved, in all my lives, birth after birth. So now let's briefly go back to the precious human existence teachings. through those and what go along with them, the teachings on death and impermanence and karma and suffering, you should have a vision of yourself in which this life is just one page in a whole story. We've had many lives before, we'll have many lives in the future. And the reason we need to spend quality time with the precious human existence teaching and the other three foundations is so that we really believe in that vision. We live as though it's true, just like we know today is just one day in our lives. More days to come, many days came before. This life is just one life. See, the problem is we get caught up. We get caught up in the details of daily life, our work, our family, what we have to do. We get sometimes very involved with it, upset about it, full of desire about it. We don't see how transient this life is. So in this verse, we are considering our future lives and what do we want to do with them? Where do we want them to go? And it says, in those future lives, may not even the sound of the words sin and suffering be heard. Now, sin, sin is a word that people, if they read a teaching with a translation of sin, they say, oh my goodness, what's all this about? It has not happy repercussions. But quite honestly, the word is a heavy-duty term in Tibetan. We cannot translate it by a politically correct, dumbed-down term that's very, very nice. It's about reality. People hurt each other. People kill animals. People, as we see these days, destroy the environment. They destroy their very own minds. That is not shallow. It is horrible. It is not necessary. The pain that is caused. We open our eyes and we see it all around us. So the word in Tibetan, dipa, can be translated in a way where it doesn't kind of hit you in the guts. But the reality we're talking about is horrible. It's disgusting. But it happens all the time. And unfortunately, we do it ourselves. So we're talking about that. Harmful action. And then suffering, you know, because you spent in the foundations a lot of time contemplating karma, cause and effect. When we do hurt other people, we hurt ourselves, other beings. When we hurt other beings. And that hurt comes back through the power of karma, comes round and causes us suffering. And while we're doing these harmful deeds, it causes others suffering. It's horrible. Now this is quite interesting because the Karmapa is saying, may not even the sound of those terms, not even the idea, sin and suffering, be heard. We need to think about this because we know, for instance, that suffering, a certain amount of suffering, is a very, very important ingredient of the precious human existence. We're not like devas, divine beings, who have barely any suffering. In a precious human existence, you have enough suffering to remind you of the nature of existence and to spark off your compassion, but you also have enough free time so that you can practice. So we know that suffering is part of a precious human existence. When we follow the Bodhisattva teachings, then we know it's all about facing suffering, the suffering of our fellow beings, our own suffering when we are ill or when life doesn't work out how we want it. If you do 7-point mind training, so many wonderful instructions about dealing with those things. And we know that the journey to enlightenment is a journey of the development of compassion. The journey is that, compassion. When compassion is full, then you're Buddha. And what is compassion? Compassion is the response to suffering. So then you might think, well, what's happening here? Why is the Karmapa saying, in future lives may there not even be, not just no sin, no suffering, but not even the sound of those words? That's what we need to think about in this verse, and it's very important. It will be very fruitful reflection. So please, please do what I call deep think. Contemplate, reflect. Take this verse away, spend a lot of time with it to work out what the Karmapa is saying. So let's interpret it in a few levels. A simple level is simply this. In future lives we want to practice. We know we need to meditate. We know we need to be there for our fellow beings. As somebody who's not high maintenance for them, but on the contrary, a trusted friend, and somebody who brings help, light, wisdom into their lives. And if you are struck down by misfortune in future lives, suffering, if you have a lot of physical illness or poverty, or you're afflicted by other people and so on, suffering in all of its forms, then you don't have the time. Many of you, you have to work for a living. It's very hard to find the time to practice a few hours a day. Why is that? It's because you have to support yourself, your family, and so on. So in a very simple way, it's saying, may you have the freedom, the time, the energy, and in your mind, a mind not preoccupied all the time with the sufferings that are happening through your karma. So we're praying for that. And then it says, may the sound of sin, or our tendencies to be angry, to be violent, to be jealous, to be so needy, I need this, I need that to be happy. All of those things suck up our time. How much time do I spend running around trying to get this, get that, get the attention, the affection of this person, that person, and so on, because of these emotional afflictions that we carry. So we don't want our future lives preoccupied, full up with either the causes of suffering or suffering. So it's a very straightforward, simple prayer. We want to have the opportunity to reconnect in our future lives with what we've done so far. You're going to be reborn. You're going to have to grow up again, go back to school again, be a teenager again, all that. How long will it take before you reconnect with all of this? How long will it take until you get back to where you are today? So we're simply praying for the good circumstances where those inner tendencies or the consequences of past karma don't come up the works too much. That's a simple and very, very proper and adequate way of understanding this verse. And then we can take a deeper understanding, the Mahayana Bodhisattva understanding, where as you awaken, you see that suffering, doesn't need to be. So let's take a very obvious example, a physical ailment, physical sickness, disability, whatever it is. For most people, let's say, then that is a suffering because their body hurts, or their mind hurts through grief or something, whatever it is, that hurt is what people call suffering. But if you're on the Bodhisattva path, and if you've done the 7-point mind training, or you've read Shantideva's Bodhisattva Way of Life and so on, you know that what for most people is a suffering, for us becomes a very, very welcome opportunity to get a stronger mind and a more compassionate mind. If our body hurts, then we become aware, like we weren't aware before, of all the other people who are suffering in a similar way, and by extension. So you get diagnosed with something, you go to hospital, then you see the other people similar to yourself, and you feel for them. And then while you're visiting the hospital, you see there is this sort of ward and that sort of ward, this sort of service. So the compassion that can grow out of your suffering is limitless. And it takes us down a peg or two from our pride and chasing our ego desires all the time. So anyway, that's the Bodhisattva teachings. It will take a few weeks to go through those. You should know them, in essence. So then, when you're sick, is that a suffering? Or is it a beautiful opportunity? Of course, if you know how to handle it. So it's not suffering anymore. It's a gift. It's a gift from the cosmos, a gift from your guru, a gift from your karma. Working material. You can turn into something amazing. You know, in the teachings it says it's like a poisonous plant that somebody knows how to turn into a fantastic medicine. So we can understand it in that way in future lives. This, oh, I'm hurting. Oh, you've no idea what happened to me. I'm feeling down and dark and limited. We say, may that not happen anymore. May we have a positive, liberating approach to everything. And on the inside too, with the causes of the suffering. When our mind is feeling angry, when it's full of passion or desire or jealousy, it's the same thing. We no longer hurt through that because we are getting wise instructions about letting the emotions be like, for instance, like clouds in the sky, not to take them too seriously, to see them for what they are, through their impermanence and so on. So we have a Bodhisattva level of teaching, and please think about this. Please revisit your Bodhisattva teachings to see the beauty of these words. In the future lives, we want a radiant, light, free, positive approach to all these things that happen to us as humans. Once you're human, of course there's births, sickness, aging, death. Then we have the Vajrayana, the Mahamudra way of seeing things, seeing the shunyata, the emptiness or voidness of suffering, the voidness of our mind poisons. And so, well, that's a deep topic that comes later on in this prayer, and that is the main topic of our whole Mahamudra practice. To put it too briefly, but maybe helpfully, whatever happens in our experience, whether it looks like it's out there in the world, other people, or inside us in our own inner intimacy, in our thoughts and feelings, it all happens in the mind. Even the distant, huge mountain. We're not really talking about a distant, huge mountain, but our experience of it. If it doesn't come up in your mind, you never know about it. Everything happens in the mind. And everything that happens in the mind can be a portal, a window to the true nature of mind. It's like a cinema. Whether it's Laurel and Hardy, whether it's a sad film or war film, they're all films. They're all on a screen. They all come through the light coming from a projector onto the screen. So whatever comes up in our mind, from heaven to hell, from Dharma, spirituality, the path as we call it, or whatever. It all happens in the mind. And rather than being lost in the details, then everything can be like a trampoline. As the emotion comes up, as the sights come up, as the sounds come in, then they can be an opportunity, each moment, to realize the true nature of mind. Whatever manifests is so clear, so vivid, yet at the same time come and gone in the mind with no substance, like a dream, like a conjurer's illusion, like a rainbow, and so on. So in that approach, we don't suffer. We are not poisoned by the mind poisons. We're in a state of transcendence where they are the most wonderful window to the Buddha nature of our mind, which we call, in this case, Mahamudra. So in his prayer, in the prayer we do, given to us by the third Karmapa, we are setting ourselves in that frame of thinking so that there won't be suffering. There won't be the sin or the poisons, any of those things. So this will really happen. It's not an airy-fairy wish, oh, may in the future there be no more suffering, not even the sound of it. It is an introduction to the very nature of the path and our wish for the way it will be. And we make that wish now so strongly that it programs our ground consciousness, Vajrayana, and that will survive death. And in the next life, something will be there in the very roots of our being that will pull us back to Dharma and pull us back to these wonderful opportunities of getting out of suffering and harmful mind tendencies once and for all. So of course, as the suffering and the anger and the pride and the ego, all of those diminish, life becomes more beautiful. And this is one of the interesting things. The most difficult part of the path is the beginning. Because we take a lot on faith, we're taking baby steps, we're not equipped. If the path, our practice, happens well, then the more experience we have, the more we'll appreciate everything that happens. We'll see, yes, this really is true. We're a little bit less angry. We're a little bit less angry. We take ourselves a bit less seriously. And that brings a lightness, a beauty. We're not all locked up in me hurting, or me, oh gosh, I lost the plot again, I got angry, I said this, I did that. Instead, we're more serene, more grown up, happier. We see the bounty that is all around us. Every moment's a treasure. Whatever is done to us, be it in normal terms good or bad, it's a treasure. So, because it is every moment, day after day, the Karmapa describes it like an ocean of goodness and wonder. So this is our general prayer. Let's leave it at that for what we want to happen in our future lives, a sort of a general perspective. And in the next verse, we'll see within that perspective, now for Mahamudra itself to reconnect again and again, what are the special conditions? But that's the next talk. I see you then. In the meantime, I hope you can practice, because practice changes everything. See you soon. Go well. Here's the Tibetan. Jisidema topa desidu
Jedang Yewa, Tserap Kunduyang, Dikdan Dungal Drayang Medrakshen, Dege Jamse, Pala Choparashu.